Okay, Denise, thank you so much for joining me on my channel. You're Denise Sheets. You have a YouTube channel called Hey Wig Sister. And I wanted to say that when I first started getting to the stage where my hair loss was really becoming unmanageable, my first port of call was YouTube. I know it's not everybody's, but that's where I found myself. And I started to watch the wig reviews. And I came across yours, and we're going back maybe about 4 years, which is
Yep.
incredible. And you've been doing this for 4 years. Now I've got my own YouTube channel, which I never expected to have. And the
Right.
reason I've got it is through the sheer excitement and enthusiasm of wearing hair. So may I share with you where I was exactly when I first came across your YouTube channel? I was at a stage where my hair loss was now more difficult to disguise. The fibers were no longer working, and I often used to be talking to somebody and would see their eyes flit to the front of my head because unfortunately that's where my hair loss started. Now, the fact that my hair loss is diffuse and all over my head now, but very bad at the front, hasn't changed since those early years of hair loss. Where were you? Tell me, where were you when you started making those famous first early videos?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for reaching out to me and asking me to do this. I am thrilled to meet you, to meet other wig sisters, hair loss sisters, and I'm in this world because of the connections that I am making with everyone. So I'm just super excited to not only share my story, but get to know you and maybe others through the comments as well. So it's an interesting story because some of it's very blurry for me. For example, our stories are, I will say that the majority of women that I speak to with androgenic alopecia, also known as female pattern hair loss, the kind that plagues you for a long time and is slow, that it's kind of a slow, painful death of your hair. Our stories are very similar. And so I started losing my hair in my 20s. When I see pictures of myself when I'm like 22, 23, I can see the thinning in the front. At that time, I'm not sure I noticed it as much because I've always had very fine, very thin hair. I've just never had great hair. I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis when I was 2, which is an autoimmune disease. And I think that played a role because my brother and sister have thick, curly hair to this day. And my sister, I'm 50, I'll be 52 in November. My sister's 50 and my brother's in his late 40s, and they still have beautiful, thick hair. So it took me a while to really realize I was experiencing hair loss because I had bad hair, if you will. And I really noticed it when I got pregnant with my son, my oldest, who is now, he's almost 24, because I had great hair while I was pregnant. This is very common. And I just remember thinking, oh, my hair is so nice and so easy to work with. And after I had him and experienced that postpartum shed, it was very severe and it really never came back. So I started wearing fibers. I was looking for solutions. I was asking hairdressers who really, it's really sad. Nobody in the hair styling industry really has any knowledge about hair loss. Nobody could offer me any solutions. And I did try a bonded topper for a short period of time, which was a disaster, super expensive, super time consuming, and it just wasn't a long-term solution for me.
And how old were you when you were going through this?
My son was an infant because I remember holding him when I went, a woman who was doing that with her hair graciously allowed me to come and watch them remove and reinstall hers. And I remember holding him, kind of shaking him on my hip as I was watching. And so I would have been 28, 27 or 28.
So
And
sad.
that would have been in probably the year 2000. So that was a long time ago. And technology has changed a lot. So for women watching this now, bonded toppers, you may never have even heard of those. Basically, they either attach the topper to your hair in such a way that you don't remove it, or what they did for me, because that was too painful for my scalp, they basically shaved up the perimeter of my head down to 1/8 of an inch, and then they glued it. And every about 4 weeks, you have to go back in and get it cut off because your hair grows. And then they, wash your scalp, wash the base of the topper, and then they reinstall it. And I'm sure technology is much better now, but back then the bases were super thick. Just wasn't a great solution for me. There was a lot of other issues. But anyway, so here I am, no topper. My hair is shaved around the perimeter. I didn't even know what to do. So I had a friend buzz my hair, and I had to walk around like that until my hair grew out. And it was so embarrassing, but I just didn't have any other options back then. Wigs were not what they are now. I did try a wig. There
Yeah.
was zero chance I was wearing a wig. They were not attractive. They didn't have mono features. They didn't have lace fronts. So I just grew my hair back out, and then I discovered Topic fibers. And now there are tons of other fibers on the market. Topic is no longer my preference, but that was what was available at the time. So I used fibers for probably about 20 years.
Mm.
And then toward the end, my hair loss got so bad, the fibers really weren't working anymore. So
Yeah.
I was wearing my hair. I had grown my hair out to shoulder length. I was constantly wearing, I have one here, cloth headbands like this, or even thicker ones that I could scrunch up on the top of my head to
Yeah.
hide my thinning. And then I would put my hair up in a messy updo or some sort of ponytail that I ratted out, or I would buy the little scrunchy ponytail with the synthetic hair on them to make it look like I had more hair. And
Yeah.
I did that for a few years,
Yes.
which was not a good solution for me, because I am a professional human resources, higher level human resources professional. I'm losing my words. I was director of human resources of a really large company, and I just didn't feel professional in my cloth headbands and my updos. And so I started looking for other solutions. And like you, I found YouTube.
Now, let me stop you there, because let's take a closer look at this whole business of hair loss. Because we're both women, we're specifically talking about young women who are losing their hair. And may I say that when I go out, more and more people, my colleagues amongst them, are experiencing hair loss. There are more women when I go out, and I clock it because I've obsessed about it for so many years. What's so special about hair? Why is losing hair such a big deal, do you think? How was it for you?
I think because appearance is so critical to how people view you, to how you view yourself. When you are not put together, you can feel less than. I do think it's cultural. I think it's society. I think there's a lot of ways that the society and our culture has built women up to value appearance. When you look at movies and TV and magazines and people on the news, everybody's always so perfectly coiffed. Their hair is done just so, their makeup is done just so. And so we internalize that. So then when we can't achieve that, it impacts our psyche. It impacts us mentally, emotionally. And I know that because I have a wonderful husband. He wasn't my husband when I was first losing my hair and all of that, but he's been with me through the wig journey, and he loves me with no hair, with no makeup. I recently lost over 60 pounds. He loved me when I was 60 pounds heavier. I mean, just I have the reinforcement that I need to be secure in myself, and I still struggle. And I think that's external feedback, a
Yes,
lot of it.
yes. When I was in the early days of watching your videos, I started, as I said earlier, with the wig reviews. But one day I came across a video, which I tried to find this afternoon, but I couldn't find it. But it was of you taking us out of your environment at home where you were doing the wig reviews, and you took us into your work environment, and you were wearing a wig. And you were talking about what wig you chose, why you chose that one, how was it for you when you were wearing it at work. Look, these are really huge for somebody who is starting to wear hair, perhaps in the privacy of their own home, and they take baby steps, and the ripple of wearing hair goes out and out and out, further and further into their life. Take me back to that day when you decided you were going to wear your hair to work. Tell me about.
Yeah. So I had purchased a topper. It was September 11th, 2018, when I purchased my first hair. And it was a synthetic topper. And I wore it to work because I was really excited to have an option other than my headband. And because it was a topper and I did have some of my own hair blending with it, I didn't really think anybody was really going to notice. I just thought it would look like I really did my hair. I was a little delusional, I will admit, but I thought, okay, I'm just going to go and I hadn't even walked into my office yet when some coworkers walked by me and were like, "Oh my goodness, look at that hair, ba ba boom." And they're being very kind and they're wonderful. They weren't, I'm having a hot flash, so pardon me, I'm going to mop off.
You're in my
Uh,
club. Yeah.
yeah. And so at that point, I felt as though the cat was out of the bag. I didn't feel as though I had to really hide it because of that interaction. I can't really explain why I was able to get over my fear. I had a ton of fear early on. That topper only worked for a few days for me because it was a heat friendly synthetic and I didn't have any idea what heat friendly versus regular synthetic. I didn't know that they needed special care. I didn't know any of that. And so it was a real challenge. So I had to find something else to wear pretty quickly. And at that point, I think I just decided this can't be worse than what I've been doing. So I'm just going to embrace it. And so I would make lots of videos in the parking lot before I got out of the car in the morning, sharing that I was really scared to go in because I was wearing different hair than I typically do. And I don't know what people are going to say. And so I had a lot of fear, but I just faced it because the option wasn't better.
Yeah, I mean, I can really relate to that because we've got nobody to talk to. When we're
That's right.
sitting there petrified, I don't have anybody to call. My husband is busy at work. I'm not going to sit on the phone to him. You know,
Right.
all I can do is get onto Instagram and say, I'm just about to do this. This is how I'm feeling. And wait for the kind comments to come and they usually do. Um, I don't know anybody else who wears hair. But when you scratch the surface, you realize that actually in our society there are people who wear hair, people on screen, people reading the news, maybe celebrities, etc. But how is it that common everyday women don't know anything about wigs? They still have the taboo that wearing wigs is embarrassing and to be avoided at all cost. How did we get to this place where there is so much need and so little solutions, so few solutions?
Yeah, I don't, that is a mystery to me, given that there are solutions and people don't know about them. I do think that's changing. And I think it's due to social media, to be frank. I mean, part of what gave me the confidence was the Facebook groups. There are tons of Facebook groups with wig wearers that are specific to wig wearing. And that was part of the reason why I even started making videos, was because of those groups, because I received so much support and I wanted to give support back. I'm also seeing more and more women come looking for solutions, finding us on social media. I mean, the fact that my content is largely just about wigs. I share a little bit about my life, occasionally different products, but it's really largely about wigs. And I almost have 60,000 followers on Instagram. That tells you there are a lot of women looking for help in this area. So I think it's changing, but prior to social media, I
Mhm.
don't know how anybody ever found anything. I hear women talk about they've been wearing wigs since the early 2000s, and I just thought, how did they even find out about them? Because I didn't know about them back then.
Sure. I mean, I should imagine that in those days you used to have the wig store, or maybe in a big department store you would have a discreet little area that sold that sold wigs, and I remember my aunt had a wig. She bought it. She was also suffering from hair loss, but she mainly bought it for convenience. And I remember one day she put it on, and it was like a big brown bird's nest had settled on her head. And
Yeah.
it was very poor, and I'm not surprised that it was a taboo in those days, because it was so out of balance with your face. The hair was so top heavy. It was
Yeah.
so out of balance with your face. But now you have the low density. My goodness, you have the monofilament. You've got the silk tops, the hand tied. You have so much that you can wear if you can overcome those first few steps and the fears, etc. But it's still an isolating experience. You're still there at home alone, having to face this challenge. Were you ever worried about disclosing your early hair wearing with your husband? Did you ever think, how am I going to do this?
Well, so my husband and I met a little bit later in life. I consider him my second chance, and I had 3 young kids when we met, and I was 35, and I was worried at that time about disclosing that I was wearing fibers. What's he going to think of me? That was a real fear for me. I remember one day we were watching a movie, and I rested my head on his shoulder, and then a little bit later when I looked at him, he had fibers on his cheek from my head,
Yes.
and I was just like, oh my
I mean,
gosh,
I
what am I
don't
gonna
know
do? I
why I'm
started like
laughing.
wiping his face, pretending I'm caressing him, trying to get the fibers off because he didn't know. And one day I just had to tell him. I had to. There was no other option. I had to tell him, and he was absolutely wonderful about it. He didn't act funny. He did nothing. So that was my first experience with telling him. So when it got to the point where I needed to wear wigs, we were already married. I mean, we got married in 2010, and I bought my first wig in late 2018. So we'd been together for a long time. He'd seen all of it. And I'm so grateful that he was the way he is, because I talk to a lot of women who are wearing wigs and they have not told their husbands. I can't tell you how many women reach out to me and ask what solutions I can recommend for wigs to sleep in or other things, because their husband doesn't know they wear wigs. They never let them see them without their wig on. And my heart goes out to them, because if there's one person you should feel safe with to be able to let them see you however you are, I would think it should be our spouses. And so I just try to help work with those women on the confidence to at least have that one place where you're safe, because I don't know what I would do if I had to wear a wig around the house all of the time, especially going through the change of life. I mean, I had hoped I could get through this without a hot flash, and clearly that didn't happen. And so I rarely wear a wig around the house. My kids see me, my husband. I mean, I've taken a wig off around my best friend around the house. So I definitely think the first hurdle is trying to find a way to be comfortable with yourself around those closest to you. So that's what I try to help women with, because I don't know what I'd do if my husband wasn't part of this journey.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it must be like to keep that secret from somebody so close to you. That
Yeah.
I
And
never.
that's a demonstration of the shame that we feel because of our hair loss. Without question, that's a demonstration of the shame that we feel. It's one of the reasons why I always take my wig off in my reviews. I always take the wig off on camera when I'm going to show the inside of the cap. For those of you who haven't seen one of my reviews, I'm talking about the wig, and then I do this. And I take the wig off and I show, because I want to help women not feel alone. The only way, because I can't sit with you in your living room, is to show myself and show what I look like without hair, because then they know that I understand.
Well, you've said something that's really touched my heart, because I remember it was actually Sister Wigs that I was watching in those very early days. And she used to take her hair off just like that. She used to take it off. And I had spent so many years trying never to bend forward in front of people. always looking to see where the light source was coming from. Where was I going to sit in the restaurant? I never wanted to sit underneath the light. I always wanted that diffuse light, hitting me face on, so I didn't have to worry about my hair. I couldn't believe that there was a woman out there who was taking her hair off, bending her head down in front of the studio lights and showing her scalp. Showing my scalp was the one thing in my life that I was running from hardest. And there she was. But it was so liberating. It took a few goes of me becoming accustomed to such a thing.
Sure.
But once I became accustomed, then I started to do it in my own videos. And I know that it's shocking for people. I can imagine what it's like for somebody to see that for the first time. But like you, it's a very central part to my philosophy about accepting yourself and not being ashamed of yourself.
That's right. And I remember, so I watched hundreds of hours of videos in the beginning. You asked earlier
Yeah.
about when I first started making videos. And part of that was because I relied on them so much myself. Because I try never to forget how I felt in the very beginning. It's why I like to tell my story. It's why I talk about it, because I don't want to get so far away from it that I forget. And I remember there's a woman named Amber Perkins, and her channel is called Fabricating Fringe. She's fabricating fringe on Instagram. She's fabricating fringe on YouTube. And she would do wig reviews, and she was one of the ones I would watch. And I had purchased wigs at a certain point, and I didn't even know how to put them on. I thought there may be a wrong way to put them on. I mean, looking back, knowing what I know now, I can't believe I was so terrified of even that. But I was, and I know others are as well. And in one of her videos, she did what I showed. She took her wig off, she was showing it, and then she put the wig back on camera. It was the first video, and I had watched hundreds of hours of videos. It was the first time anybody had ever put a wig on camera of all the videos that I watched. And I cried because I finally saw how to put a wig on, because
Yeah.
nobody showed that. And to this day, I remember that. And that's why I take them off and almost always put them back on camera. Not always anymore. If it's a super long synthetic, those can be hard. But other than that, I just remember the little things that make such a big difference to a woman who is struggling so much that they're watching videos and they're trying to figure out what to do. And so that's part of why I started making videos. So in the beginning, I was making videos about the wigs I was buying, and I was putting them in a Facebook group. I wasn't putting them on YouTube. And as the days would go on, if you make comments, they kind of go down and go down, and all the comments replace on top. And someone would ask a question, and I maybe had showed it in that little 3-minute video I made, but I couldn't find it in the group. The search on Facebook wasn't as good back then. So I started putting them on YouTube just so that I could link to it. So instead of trying to find the video in the group, I would just say, oh, here's a video I did on that. And then people started following me on YouTube, and one thing led to another. And that's how I got to where I am today. But it never, ever started with me wanting to have a YouTube channel and a following at all. I was just trying to share what I was finding, because without people being willing to do that, I would have never found wigs. I would never be where I am today. So the least I could do is give back.
Yeah, because actually, once you get your first wig and you start wearing it, I'm going to ask you about obviously what you're wearing and what your first wig was in a minute. But once you start accepting that you're going to be wearing wigs, sometimes you think, well, I'm just going to wear it if I go out of an evening, but I'm not going to wear it to work, or I'm just going to wear it in my own time. That's how I started, baby steps. Um, then it goes from, okay, here's the wig, it's on my head, I think it looks okay, my husband tells me my daughters tell me it looks okay. Wow, this is kind of exciting, because now I can actually wear stronger colors, or maybe I can wear a stronger shade of lipstick, or perhaps choose a shorter style or a longer style. That is incredibly liberating, and it goes from being afraid of wig wearing to starting to enter a world of experimentation where you start doing new things with your look?
Absolutely. Not just wigs, other things. And I've even heard from women who started to take better care of themselves in general when they started to wear wigs because they no longer felt as ashamed, less than, ugly, if you will. I've heard it all. And I truly think, and it may not be wigs for everybody, it may be something else, but whatever will empower you to take hold of the thing that's crushing you and not let it crush you anymore. And for me, it was wigs, it was hair, it was the connection I made with other people. It was helping. I'm a firm believer that if you can help others, you will help yourself in the process. And that's part of why I do this. It's one of the reasons why I started to review every possible color and style and type. I mean, anything. I'll review anything that's worthy of someone spending money on. A $20 Amazon wig that's decent and a $2,000 human hair wig, because I want every woman to see something that speaks to them wherever they are in their life. And in that process, I've helped myself.
So, dare I ask you though, what your very first wig was? Do you remember?
I do. It was Belle Tress Top Wave, which is a wavy topper. Belle Tress is a brand, it's one of the major name brands that only makes heat-friendly synthetic. And so I had said earlier that I had worn that topper to work, and everybody knew right away that I did something. They didn't know what I had done, and I told them. But I didn't know that heat-friendly wigs behave differently than regular synthetic and need special care. And so within 4 days, that topper was clumping up. My hair wasn't blending with it anymore. It was a real challenge. So that's another part of the wig journey that's hard. There's so much to learn, so very much to learn. And you just have simply no clue how much there is to know. I actually made an 8-episode new wig wearers series a couple of years ago
I know.
because of that, for that exact reason, because there's just so much. And my accounts have grown to the point now where I have a very hard time getting back to everybody. I think that's the double-edged sword of this type of thing. I want to help as many as I can, but the more who find me, the harder it is for me to really like individually help people. So I make videos based on common questions I get. That way I can just send someone a link to the video. It's not quite as personal, but it still helps them. And that's how that wig wear series started. I was thinking at the time about, what do I wish I would have known, or what would have helped me spend far less money in the beginning trying to figure this out on my own. And so that's how that series was born. So it was a Belle Tress Top Wave topper. And I discovered early on that toppers don't work for me. I have a very sensitive scalp, and the clips are just so painful on my scalp. Some women have no issue, and others like me just can't wear them. So I graduated to wigs very quickly and spent thousands of dollars on synthetic wigs that did not work for me because I didn't have any clue what worked for me without trying. And I would watch the reviewers I was watching look gorgeous in a specific wig, so I would buy it, and it didn't look like that on me. And
Wow.
so
Thousands
that's
of
where I was.
dollars. You spent
Yes.
thousands of
I
dollars.
don't recommend it. I don't recommend doing what I did at all. I did make a video actually early on wig addiction, which I believe is a real thing. And I believe it happens to women who don't have addictive personalities, which I don't. But when you are desperate to solve your hair loss issue, you don't make the best decisions. And another reason why I make the videos that I make, because I want to help with that. But I'd buy just on a whim, or I would scour the clearance sites and buy wigs because they were cheaper on clearance, but then you couldn't return them. And so it was a tough road for about 6 months for me. It was very difficult, lots of tears, lots of bad purchases. But I call that the time what I refer to my first about year and a half as the time I got my master's degree in wigs. And that's why I'm where I am today.
Yes. Now nobody can accuse you of wearing a wig that doesn't suit you today. What are you wearing?
Today I'm wearing Raquel Welch Trend Alert in the color shaded cappuccino. So this is a synthetic wig. It's one of the major name brands. Raquel Welch is a very well-known brand in the major name brand world. And it's just a gorgeous, fun synthetic. I wear everything. I wear human hair. I brought a few wigs in case we talked about specifics, but this one right here is a $20 Amazon headband wig. And
Uh-huh.
it's one of my favorite wigs. And I wear all kinds. I have found a budget friendly Chinese vendor that sells human hair. So I wear that. I mean, I just have everything you can think of for different occasions. And also, it helps me to help others if I have experience across the board in different things.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, because I know it, the compulsion or the desire to try another style in another color, it doesn't really go away. Although with time you do learn what suits you best. I quite like just having my feet, my one foot in one camp, one foot in the other camp. So I know what brunettes I like. I'm a natural brunette. I know what shade of brunette is good for me. But if I fancy something a little bit lighter, I know that the ashy blondes are going to go with my olive complexion.
Same,
So
same.
I feel like I've come to a natural equilibrium in my journey, but of course the journey continues. So I was thinking about our little chat today, and I was thinking, okay, so here we are, two women, we've been through the mill for decades. We've come to a solution that's probably the best one for us, but there are still things that pose a challenge for the future. And I've made a little mini list. Starting to wear hair to work. That's something that I recently did that I had never done before. It was the challenge of walking into a room at the end of a district meeting, or it wasn't at the end. I walked in obviously at the beginning, but every head turned. I had sent an email previously to warn people that my alopecia had gotten so much worse, and this was the only solution I could want to do. Um, that was a challenge in front of friends. So people who knew me from before. So the people, they're not strangers. They know what I usually look like. And now I very obviously look completely different. The other thing is in the heat, you know, when you're having hot flushes or when you live in a hot country, or if you're going on holiday, how do you go about swimming? What do you do when you're on the beach? Um, And of course, the last one, which I was thinking about, was dating. Um, and how your husband is responding to your situation. So those are just a few. Now, I noticed you picked up a piece there when I said about swimming. Have you got something
Yes.
to share?
Well, I have two. The cheap headband wigs. I didn't bring a wig grip with me, so it's going to be a challenge. But I don't always wear wig grips, but with headband wigs, I do. So this is just what's called a 3/4 wig, a 3/4 wig,
Yeah.
also called a headband wig. The only way you can wear this is with a headband because there's no front on it. So I love these. So I have two different headbands depending on what I want to do. These bigger headbands are great. And I actually have a video where I show how to swim with wigs on. And I show a basic cap synthetic wig and I show this wig. And that's absolutely possible. Synthetic is way better than, I'm grabbing my earring and everything, is way better than human hair when it comes to swimming and the beach, because synthetic can take a beating and it's not going to fade or oxidize with the sun. But if you take your wig and you throw it on your head, and then I'm going to pull it off without a wig grip. So I'm just going to sort of demonstrate because this is a little big on me, but you stick a headband and then you stick like a ponytail holder, you stick it in a messy bun. Let's try.
I love the idea of a 3/4 wig like that. It didn't
Yeah.
even occur to me to wear such a thing.
Yeah. And so that is how I go to the beach. It's also one thing I do when it's really hot out. For some reason, I find throwing a headband on with a wig and throwing the wig up
Mm.
Makes a huge difference when it's hot out. Um, Another thing I do is I buy a hat. I have these hat wigs that have no hair on the top. And then that I can either wear a hat with, or I can wear, I like to just take a bandana and, like a do-rag kind of tie it around your head. I have a hat here somewhere. And then I put it in like pigtail braids and I do that. And that is
Amazing.
perfect. It's nice and cool. So there are so many options out there if you're looking for um, different situations. Sometimes I'll wear short wigs. The video you were just talking about, I made because, I've been working from home for the past couple of years, and I took a project that required me to go into the office. I wasn't having hot flashes when I stopped working in the office 2.5 years ago. And I didn't consider how hard that would be in an office all day and having hot flashes. So I made 3 videos, and I'm going to put that into a series for YouTube on the hair I chose each day to help me go through hot flashes. And one thing I'll do is I'll put the wig in an updo. I'll just kind of grab it all in the back and put a clip in or something to keep it off my neck.
Yeah.
And that makes a really big difference for hot flashes. So lots of options.
Yeah, you've given me a couple of really good ideas. And I mean, I may be going to Greece on holiday in September, and I'm very taken with that hairband thing and having the hair up. It looks kind of messy and kind of effortlessly
That's
sexy.
right. That's right. I have a video on YouTube where I talk about it and I show it. And I also link the wig that I purchased from Amazon.
Great.
So I can give that to you if you want to link it
Please.
or however, but that,
Yes, please.
whenever I find a good solution, I make a video on it. But you were saying other challenges. And one thing I hadn't thought of prior to, so all of those were challenges for me in the beginning. And a new challenge that has posed that is a challenge to this day for me, even though I am so public about my wig wearing. Anybody who knows me in real life knows I wear wigs because I post it on Facebook. So if they follow me on Facebook or Instagram, then they know. But there's a group of people who don't really know me, who don't know. And those are parents of my children's, either their friends or their sports mates. For example, my son plays football. He's played football for years. And so we go to games, and a lot of those parents, because he's not friends with all those kids, he doesn't hang out with all of them. Yet we see all of those parents at all of the games. They don't really even know who I am. They don't have any idea that I wear wigs. And I wear different wigs every time I go to the games. It just depends on my mood. And I still feel a twinge of, I wonder what people are going to think. Are they going to think I'm weird because they don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing? And I do it anyway. And I think that's my best advice is sometimes you just have to do it scared. You just have to do it anyway. You just have to remember that you have to live with you. You have to satisfy yourself in your choices. You really don't owe the world an explanation. We feel like we do, but we don't. And what makes me happy is to wear what I feel like wearing on any given day. That's going to suit whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm wearing, however I'm feeling. And I force myself to do it even when I'm nervous.
Mhm. So, regardless of the discomfort that you might feel sometimes, I found that overall, the people who know I wear wigs develop a little twinkle in their eye as they start to think, oh, I could have a little topper maybe for that holiday I'm going on. Or, women are excited about hair. We can't get away from that.
No, we can't. So many women suffer from hair loss silently, or they have a family member. And so one of the things I did at work, actually, when I worked in a large company. We had 7,000 employees, and I was in a higher level HR position. So I was often in front of employees who I'd never met before, and they'd never met me. And they'd see me and maybe in different hair. And sometimes people would get up the courage to ask me about it. And I would tell people, one of the reasons I do this, well, is for me, but it's also because it can strike up a conversation and somebody can learn about a solution for either their own or a family member's hair loss that they had no idea existed. And that makes sense to people. I think when, for women who are terrified of what people are going to think of them, tell them that you do it so that you can help others, that
Yes.
you want people to notice so that you can talk about it, and you never know who you'll help.
You know
I have
something?
helped
Yeah,
so many women because of my public hair wearing.
I feel like giving you a round of applause actually, because you've landed on another part, that really just my belief that taking the focus off yourself and placing it on somebody else who maybe is looking for something, that's surely a good enough reason to wear hair, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, without question.
I don't know whether you want to touch about the financial aspect of hair wearing, though, because I know that the cost of pieces is going up and up and up. Even the clearance. And remember, you've got better deals in the US than we do here.
Yeah,
There is one website I know of that allows you to pay an installment over a period of 3 months. That's nice, but it doesn't solve the problem really. How are women going to manage the outlay um, if they want to replace the pieces? And let's face it, something that I didn't realize happened was that the fibers become very dry and clump very quickly, and
yeah.
these pieces need to be replaced. Do you have any advice about that?
Yeah, so I am frustrated, I'll admit, about how expensive it has become to wear hair. And at some point, the vast majority of people aren't going to be able to afford it. It's one of the reasons why I do try to do reviews of wigs from Amazon, or the cheaper pieces. People have been telling me about Shein and their wigs lately, and Temu I think is new. And so I do try to learn about budget options whenever I can. I also mentioned earlier that I have reviewed some pieces. This is a human hair budget piece by Emma Hairpiece that needs to be washed. I've worn it a ton, but that is more affordable, and human hair will last longer than synthetic. And so I try to find those. The other thing that I try to talk about is how to style your wigs in a way that will help prolong their life. So longer synthetic wigs, the friction on clothing is very hard on synthetic, and it will shorten the life over time. So showing how to put it into updos and to style it in such a way, or to refresh the fibers using a form of heat that's appropriate for the wig. For example, a wig like the one I wore most of this video, this one right here, is regular synthetic. You can't take like a curling iron to it or a hot air brush because regular synthetic can't take that heat, but you can take steam to it. And so learning how to refresh synthetic fibers using a cheap clothing steamer. And you can even recurl one using steam. It's not as easy as curling your own hair, but there are lots of ways to manage your wigs to help prolong the life, to refresh them, to revive the fibers. So I try to balance the reviews that I do, because I do a lot of reviews. I'm very blessed. I get sent a lot of pieces to review. And I want to show lots of options, but I want to balance that with education, with support, because not every woman can have 20 wigs to alternate. So what can a woman who can only afford one or two potentially, how can they make the most out of them? And so those types of videos are priceless and will help.
Would you put on that the one
Yes,
from China, the little
absolutely.
hair one? Would you
So
be
hopefully,
able to send a link for this?
yes, absolutely. I will not only send a link, but I can link the review. Now, remember, I have worn this about, gosh, at this point, 17 times, something like that. And it needs to be washed desperately. So it's not looking its best because it's really dirty. But if you
I
will
think
link the video I did on this one,
yeah.
it's a gorgeous piece. It's $249, which is not super budget. But keep in mind, a wig like this is going to last a minimum of a year, if not more than that. And so a synthetic, even with perfect care, steaming and all of that, you're still going to struggle to get but 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months out of it. And even at that point, beyond like 3 months, it's going to really feel terrible. It may not look terrible, but it's going to feel terrible, super dry. And so I was excited to find this one because when you get a wavy human hair piece, one of the arguments I hear is people don't want to style the hair. That's the beauty of synthetic. You don't have to style it. Well, a wavy piece like this, all you have to do is spray a little water on it to refresh the waves. And so I was excited to find a piece that could potentially be affordable for people.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. I will put those links in. Do you have any last words that you would like to add that we haven't touched on?
I think the most important thing I want any woman who is searching for a solution to hair loss to know is you're not alone. I get it. If somebody isn't in real life with you, there is an aspect of being alone that you can't escape, but you're not alone. There are so many women like you, like me, out here who want to help. We make videos to help. We do our very best to answer every question, every comment. I mean, between the comments on YouTube, messages I get on Instagram, Facebook, and emails, I probably get 100 to 150 a week of women reaching out with questions. And so I always tell people, if you don't hear from me, send it again. It's just got lost in the volume, but I am truly willing to help, and others are as well. So I think you need to avail yourself of those resources if you're struggling. You shouldn't struggle alone. And I also tell women, a lot of people who follow me are not on Facebook or Instagram. A lot of women have sworn off social media for great reasons, truly good reasons. But if you're in a position where you're suffering so badly, I strongly encourage women to reconsider a Facebook account and joining some of the wig groups, because there is no substitute to being around, whether it's virtually or in person, other women who are experiencing what you're experiencing or have and found solutions and are willing to talk about it. You can get far more help from a Facebook group than you can get from me, because I'm just one person. But you can get tons of feedback before you choose to buy a piece. You can get information. I just cannot stress enough how valuable those groups are. And I've heard from many women who have taken my advice, because I preach this a lot, and they didn't want Facebook, and then they took my advice and they were so grateful because they finally stopped feeling so alone and desperate. And you can cancel the account eventually if you get to the point where you're comfortable. But I just think finding a community that can support you is going to be critical to you getting past the shame, the fear, the things that are holding you back. I know people see me and think, I can never be like that. I'll never be able to wear every color. I'll never be able to wear all of these things. I didn't think I would either. And people sometimes don't believe me because I'm past that.
Yeah.
But I had months of crying and putting wigs on and trying to figure out why they look terrible on me. And I remember posting in one of the groups, why is it that I look in a mirror with a wig on and it looks horrible and wiggy and just not at all like I saw in the pictures and the videos, but yet I take a selfie with my phone and it looks completely different? Which one is right? And someone responded and said, does it matter? Go with the one that you like. Because what we need to do is train our brains to see things differently than we are used to seeing them. And honestly, that made a huge difference for me. And now what I see in the mirror nearly always matches what I see in a selfie. It didn't in the beginning. And that tells me it's my brain, not reality, that's been distorted.
Yeah, this is a little bit more of a philosophical comment, but you can weave a new story, a story that suits you better. And you're allowed. You're allowed. That there are no rules to say that the negative story in your head is the correct one. It just depends which one you give yourself permission to go with. And that's probably
right.
one of the biggest lessons that I've taken away from this. So Denise Sheets, hey wig sister, I thank you again for your time. I look forward to receiving those links, and they'll be posted in the comment box below. And thanks so much. And I will look forward to your next video.
Thank you so much. Me too. It was so great talking with you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.